They say Abuja is a city where everyone pretends to have it all together. The shiny cars, the polished suits, the smiles that hide tired hearts. But in a corner of Nyanya, where the scent of engine oil hangs thick in the air and the dust never really settles, a man named Emeka was living a life no one expected. Every morning, he rolled up the sleeves of his faded overall and walked into a noisy garage. Grease smudged his hands, sweat streaked his face, and yet there was something unusual about him. A quiet calm, a sense of discipline that didn't quite fit the chaos around him. People called him Mekman E, a nickname given by the younger apprentices who respected how quickly he could fix anything, from a sputtering Peugeot to a silent Toyota. But no one knew that Emeka was far from poor. Behind those oil-stained hands was a man born into wealth, the heir of Emeka Group Holdings, a company that owned half the luxury properties stretching from Maitama to Jabi. Yet, Emeka had grown weary of fake laughter at dinner tables and women who only saw his wallet. So, one day he disappeared from the spotlight and decided to live like a common man, to see who truly had a heart beyond gold and glamour. The first weeks were brutal. He slept in a small single-room apartment near Nyanya Market, with a rickety ceiling fan that made more noise than wind. He learned to eat akara from street vendors and wash his clothes by hand. But with every passing day, he found peace in the simplicity that money could never buy. One humid afternoon, while Emeka crouched beside a car hood, tightening a stubborn bolt, he heard a soft voice behind him. "Excuse me, sir, your food." He turned, and there she was, Ngozi. She wasn't the kind of woman who shouted to be noticed. Her beauty was quiet, the kind that spoke through her eyes. She sold lunch to mechanics around the garage, rice and stew packed in transparent takeaway bowls, carried in a basket covered with a clean towel. Her smile was humble, but her presence had warmth, the kind that reminded Emeka of home. "How much?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. "Don't worry," she said, laughing softly. "Pay when you eat finish." She didn't know who he was, and he didn't intend to tell her. That day he tasted not just her jollof rice but the honesty behind it. It was flavorful not because of fancy spices, but because it was made with care. From that day Ngozi became part of the garage rhythm. Every noon she arrived with her basket, greeting everyone by name. She never mocked, never looked down on anyone, even the apprentice boys who teased her for fun. Emeka watched her quietly, admiring the way she moved through life with grace despite her own struggles. One evening the rain poured unexpectedly. The whole garage flooded. Customers ran for cover. Ngozi had come late, soaked, clutching her basket. The moment Emeka saw her shivering, he ran forward and guided her into his little shelter, an improvised shed beside his workspace. "You'll catch cold if you stay out there," he said. "It's okay, I'm fine," she replied, smiling through chattering teeth. He found a dry towel and offered it. She hesitated, then accepted. They stood there for minutes, the rain hammering on the roof, both quiet, listening to the thunder echo over the hills. In that silence, something unspoken was born, not love yet, but curiosity wrapped in warmth. When the rain eased, Ngozi looked up at him. "You're not like the others here," she said softly. "What do you mean?" he asked. "You listen, you look people in the eye. You fix cars, but it feels like you're fixing people too." Emeka laughed, a genuine laugh, the first in a long time. "Maybe I just like helping." She smiled and left, and Emeka watched her go, the rain-washed streets glowing under the streetlights. For the first time in months he felt alive again. But deep down guilt flickered. He knew this peace was built on a lie about who he really was. He had promised himself he wouldn't let anyone close until his test was complete. Yet Ngozi was different. Her sincerity disarmed him in ways he couldn't explain. As days turned into weeks, their conversations grew longer. They spoke about life, about dreams, about what honesty really meant in a city full of pretenders. Ngozi told him she had once worked as a receptionist and was but lost her job after defending a colleague. Instead of giving up, she started her small food business, determined to survive without selling her dignity. Emeka admired that strength. He had seen women beg, flatter, even deceive for access to power, but Ngozi stood her ground. And somehow in her courage he saw the kind of heart he'd been searching for all along. One night, long after the garage had closed, Emeka sat on a broken stool, staring at his phone. Dozens of unread messages flashed on the screen. His assistant, his board members, his mother. They wanted him back in the corporate world. But he couldn't go. Not yet. Not until he finished his test. He whispered to himself, "If she can love me like this, then maybe she's the one." Outside, the city of Abuja glimmered faintly in the distance. The skyscrapers of Central Business District, the luxury lights of Maitama. But here in Nyanya, under the soft hum of generators, a different kind of light was growing, the light of something real. And that was how it began, the story of a billionaire disguised as a mechanic, and the woman whose kindness would change everything. They say kindness isn't about what you give, but what it costs you to give it. And that's exactly what Emeka was about to learn. Weeks passed, and Ngozi became the sunshine that colored the dull metal and oil-stained world of the Nyanya garage. Every day she showed up like clockwork, carrying her food basket, greeting the mechanics with laughter that felt too genuine for a city as calculating as Abuja. But there was one day that stood out, the day Emeka's disguise was truly tested. It was a blistering afternoon, the kind of Abuja heat that melted tempers and patience alike. The garage was packed, the air thick with the sound of clanging metal and frustrated customers. Emeka had been working on a battered Lexus when he noticed Ngozi walk in, her usual cheer slightly dimmed. "Ah, Madam Rice, you look tired today," one of the mechanics teased. She forced a small smile. "Just one of those days. My supplier increased the price of rice again. But we move." Emeka watched her. He could tell there was more behind her tired eyes, something heavier. When she turned to leave, he followed her outside. "Ngozi, wait, what's wrong?" "Nothing serious," she said, adjusting her basket. "Just business, wala. One of my regulars hasn't paid me in 2 weeks, and now my landlord is threatening to lock my door." Her voice wavered, but she caught herself. "I'll be fine. I always am." Emeka wanted to help so badly, to tell her he could pay her rent 10 times over. But he bit his tongue. This was the whole point of the disguise, to see who people were without his money in the picture. So he decided to test something different. That evening, as the last customer drove away, Emeka quietly walked over to where Ngozi had kept her food flasks. He took one and left a small note. "Thank you for feeding us every day. Here's something small to bless you back." He slipped 2,000 Nigerian nairas under the flask, not much but enough to mean something real. The next morning she arrived early, her face lit with gratitude. "Whoever did this yesterday, thank you," she said aloud. "You reminded me that God still sees." She never suspected Emeka and he never admitted it. But that small act changed something between them, the way she looked at him, the way he spoke to her. Their connection began to deepen, quiet but powerful. One day she brought him homemade food, jollof rice, fried plantain, and chicken wrapped neatly in foil. "You've been working too hard," she said, handing it to him. "And who told you that?" he teased. "The sweat on your face is talking," she replied, laughing. That laughter, it became his favorite sound. The way her eyes crinkled when she smiled made him forget who he was supposed to be. Each moment with her made his world simpler and yet more complicated at the same time. But fate has a funny way of testing sincerity right when things start to feel too comfortable. One late afternoon, as Emeka and Ngozi were sharing a quiet meal by the side of the garage, a black SUV pulled up. The kind that didn't belong in Nyanya. The tinted window rolled down, and Emeka's heart froze. Sitting behind the wheel was Tund, his business partner and oldest friend. "Emeka?" Tund shouted, stepping out shocked. "What in heaven's name are you doing here?" Ngozi's spoon paused midair. Emeka stood speechless for a second before managing, "Ah, Tund, long time. I'm just helping out here." Tund laughed, confused. "Helping out? In a mechanic garage? Dressed like this?" "Bro, your mother has been calling me every day. They think you're missing." Ngozi's brows furrowed. "Wait, you know each other?" Emeka stammered, Yes, we went to school together." "Long story." Tund looked at him with disbelief, then smirked. "You're a strange man, Emeka. Only you would turn a garage into a social experiment." He chuckled and got back into the car. "Anyway, call me before your mother files a missing persons report." And just like that, the SUV drove away, leaving a trail of dust and tension. Ngozi turned to him, her voice low but sharp. "Emeka, who are you really?" The question hit him like a blow. He swallowed, trying to think fast. "It's not what you think. I'll explain." "Explain what? That you're pretending? That everything I thought you were isn't true?" Her voice cracked. She grabbed her basket and walked away before he could stop her. That night, Emeka couldn't sleep. He sat outside his room, the night quiet except for distant generator hums. For the first time his disguise felt heavy, not like a test anymore but a burden. He had found the one person whose heart he wanted to trust, yet he had built everything between them on deception. Still, he told himself there was only one way forward. He needed to finish what he started. He whispered into the night, "If she walks away after knowing the truth, Then at least I'll know her heart was never for sale. Sometimes it's not lies that hurt the most. It's the truth we were never prepared to hear. For days Ngozi didn't come to the garage. The usual laughter that once filled Emeka's world was gone, replaced by the echo of metal and silence. The mechanics noticed his mood shift, his work slowed, his smile faded. Every evening he found himself walking toward Was Market, hoping to see her familiar basket and soft smile among the crowd. But she was nowhere to be found. Then one Sunday evening, just as the sun dipped behind the rocky edges of Asakoro, he saw her again, sitting by a roadside suya stand, her face lit by the dull glow of the coals. He approached slowly. "Ngozi." She looked up, startled. "Emeka. I didn't expect to see you here." "I've been looking for you," he said softly. "You left so suddenly that day." "What did you expect me to do?" she replied. "You lied, Emeka. You lied to everyone. And to me." He sighed deeply, staring at the flicker of flame between them. "I didn't lie, Ngozi. I just didn't tell the whole truth. I needed to know who people were, who you were, when money wasn't involved." Her eyes glistened in the night. "And what did you find out? That the world isn't kind. That most people love power, not people. But you," he paused, his voice lowering, "you were different." For a moment she said nothing. Then she shook her head slowly. "You don't get it. It's not about what you found. It's about what you hid. You wanted truth from everyone else but built our friendship on a lie." Those words pierced deeper than any insult. Emeka tried to speak, but his throat felt dry. He wanted to tell her everything. His real name, his company, the mansions in Maitama, the empire he had built from his father's legacy. But it wasn't the right moment. Not yet. So he simply said, "I'm sorry." And those two words hung in the air, powerless against the weight of broken trust. Ngozi stood, adjusting her shawl. "Maybe it's time you go back to wherever you came from, Emeka. Maybe you've tested enough hearts. Don't test mine anymore." She walked away, her steps soft but firm, the kind that left footprints in memory. The days that followed were some of the hardest of Emeka's life. He returned to work, but the garage no longer felt the same. Every clank of metal reminded him of words left unsaid. Every empty lunch hour reminded him of her absence. But fate always finds a way of bringing the right people back together at the right time. One morning, as he walked to the garage, a commotion erupted near the Nyanya junction. A delivery tricycle had overturned and people were rushing to help. Emeka pushed through the crowd and froze. Ngozi. She was there, kneeling beside the injured driver, her clothes stained with dust, her hands trembling but steady as she tried to stop the man's bleeding with her scarf. "Call an ambulance," she shouted. Emeka didn't think twice. He jumped in, helped lift the man, and flagged down a passing car. Together they rushed him to a nearby clinic. Inside the waiting room, Ngozi sat, exhausted. Emeka sat beside her quietly, not saying a word. For a long while they both just breathed, tired but relieved. Finally she spoke. "You didn't have to help." "Neither did you," he replied. "But you did. That's who you are." She turned to look at him, that same look of guarded emotion but softer now. "You really are different, Emeka. I don't understand you, but I can't hate you either." He smiled faintly. "I can live with that." They both laughed quietly, the tension between them dissolving like dew under sunlight. From that day their friendship found a fragile rebirth. Not what it was before, but something that grew slower, more honest this time. Emeka knew he couldn't keep pretending forever. He needed to end the charade before it destroyed whatever fragile hope remained between them. So one evening he called his assistant in secret. "Yes, sir," the voice answered. "Prepare for the foundation event at Transcorp Hilton next month," he said. "And send an invite to Miss Ngozi Chukwu." "To the gala, sir?" "Yes," Emeka replied. "She deserves to know who I really am, and why I started all this." As he hung up, he took one last look at the garage. The sun dipped low over the dusty Abuja horizon, casting long shadows over the cars. Soon this world would know the truth, and so would she. But truth, as Emeka was about to discover, doesn't always heal the way we expect. Sometimes it wounds first, before it sets us free. It was one of those Abuja nights where the city looked too perfect to be real. The skyline shimmered with lights from Maitama to Asakoro, and the streets buzzed with the hum of black SUVs heading toward Transcorp Hilton, where the elite of the capital were gathering for a grand charity gala. The banners outside read, "The Emeka Foundation, empowering the heart of humanity." Inside, the hall glittered with crystal chandeliers and soft jazz playing in the background. Men in tuxedos, Women in shimmering gowns. Cameras flashing. Reporters whispering. Every major CEO, politician, and diplomat seemed to be there. And in the middle of it all stood Emeka, no longer the man in grease-stained overalls. Tonight, he was every inch the billionaire he truly was, confident, refined, and calm in a navy blue suit tailored to perfection. Yet, behind the composure, his heart was restless. He wasn't thinking about the applause, the speeches, or the cameras. He was thinking about one person, the woman who didn't belong in that world of marble floors and designer perfume, but who had somehow given it meaning. Ngozi. He had arranged everything. The invitation had gone out quietly, a valued community partner. He wasn't sure she'd come. But when he turned toward the entrance and saw her step through the grand glass doors, his breath caught. She looked simple yet elegant, a soft blue gown that complemented her skin, her hair tied neatly. She looked around uncertainly, clutching her small purse like she didn't belong. But she did. She just didn't know it yet. A waiter approached her with a polite bow. "Miss Ngozi Chukwu? Mr. Emeka will see you shortly." Her eyes widened. Mr. Emeka? The same name as the man from the garage? It couldn't be. She followed the waiter through the crowd, and every step she took was a step into a world she had never imagined existed. Chandeliers reflected on polished marble. Famous faces nodded politely as she passed. And then she saw him. Standing at the center of the hall, surrounded by business partners and dignitaries, was the man she thought she knew, but this Emeka was different. Clean-shaven, elegant, confident. The billionaire whose name she had unknowingly spoken every day. Her breath caught. "Emeka," she whispered. The room fell into an awkward silence. He turned. Their eyes met. For a few seconds neither spoke. The crowd, sensing tension, began whispering among themselves. Emeka excused himself from the group and walked toward her, each step echoing across the marble floor. "Ngozi," his voice was calm but soft, almost breaking. "So it's true," she said quietly. "You're that Emeka." "Yes," he admitted. "The same man. The same one you met at the garage." "Why?" Her voice trembled. "Why would you do that? Why would you lie to me, to everyone?" He exhaled deeply. "Because I wanted to know what love looks like when money isn't part of the picture. I was surrounded by people who smiled at my wealth, not my heart. I needed to find one person who would see me, the real me, and that person was you." The cameras flashed as reporters realized something was unfolding that wasn't part of the planned gala. But Emeka didn't care. He took the microphone from the host and turned toward the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "For years I thought money could buy peace, respect, even love. But I learned the hardest way that none of those things are real if they come with a price tag." The hall fell silent. Every head turned toward him. "A few months ago I lived as a mechanic in Nyanya. No suits, no title. Just me. And in that place I met someone who treated me with kindness when I had nothing to offer." He turned, locking eyes with Ngozi again. "She didn't care about my clothes, my status, or my name. She cared about people. About doing what's right even when no one was watching. And tonight, I want to thank her. Because she reminded me what humanity looks like." The audience erupted in whispers. Some clapped quietly, others watched, spellbound. Ngozi stood frozen. Her heart was torn between admiration and hurt. It wasn't just that he'd lied, it was that she had opened her heart to someone who didn't trust her enough to tell the truth. When he finished speaking, he walked over to her again. "Ngozi, I'm sorry," he said softly. "I never meant to humiliate you. I just needed to be sure that if I gave my heart, it would be to someone who saw me, not my money." She looked at him, really looked at him. The room blurred around them, but her thoughts were sharp. "You think love is a test?" she asked, her voice steady now. "That people have to prove themselves to deserve honesty?" Her words cut deep. "You wanted truth, Emeka, but you never gave it. You wanted real love, but you hid behind lies. How can something real grow from that?" He tried to speak, but she shook her head gently. "You may be the richest man in this room, but tonight I pity you. Because you had to pretend to be poor just to find something money couldn't buy. That means, deep down, you never believed it existed." She turned to leave, her footsteps echoing across the marble floor. Emeka stood still, staring after her, humbled, speechless, broken. The hall remained silent until the host awkwardly resumed the event, but Emeka barely heard a word. The woman who had taught him the meaning of truth had just walked away from him, leaving behind the one lesson he had never expected to learn. That love doesn't need testing. It needs trust. And in that moment, under the glow of Abuja's brightest lights, the billionaire realized how empty his world really was. The night air in Abuja shimmered softly with the glow of headlights and laughter spilling from the Transcorp Hilton terrace. The charity gala had ended hours ago, but the echo of Emeka's confession still hung in the hall like a sacred memory. Ngozi sat alone by the fountain in the hotel's courtyard, her heels off, her gown brushing the marble floor. The sound of flowing water mingled with the distant hum of music from the ballroom. She had been quiet since the speech, not out of anger but out of reflection. Then she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Ngozi." She turned. Emeka stood a few steps away, no longer the billionaire in a designer suit, nor the mechanic in greasy overalls, just a man stripped of pride and wealth, standing in vulnerability. For a moment neither spoke. The wind carried the soft fragrance of hibiscus flowers from the garden. Emeka exhaled. "I didn't know how to face you after everything. I kept telling myself it was just a test, that I needed to know who would love me for me, but in truth I was scared." "Scared of what?" Ngozi asked softly. "Scared that without my money I'd be invisible. That people only saw my surname, Okonkwo, not the man beneath it. But you saw me. You looked at a poor mechanic and saw worth. You gave me food when I had nothing to offer." Ngozi looked at him, her eyes glistening under the warm hotel lights. "Emeka, I wasn't kind because I expected anything. I just believed that everyone deserves care. But when I found out you lied," she paused, her voice trembling slightly, "it hurt. Not because you were rich, but because you didn't trust me enough to tell me." Emeka's eyes lowered. "You're right. I failed you. And I've thought about that every single day." He took a step closer. "After you walked away, I realized something. The greatest poverty in this world isn't lacking money. It's lacking truth. And I was the poorest man alive." The silence that followed was heavy but healing. The night breeze rustled through the palm trees, carrying their shared pain into the darkness. Then Emeka reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded note, stained and old. "Do you remember this?" he asked. Ngozi frowned slightly. "No, what is it?" "It's the receipt from the first plate of jollof rice I bought from you at the garage. I kept it." She laughed quietly through her tears. "You kept that?" He smiled. "It reminded me of the day I met the woman who changed everything." There was sincerity in his tone. No rehearsed charm, no billionaire arrogance, just honesty. Ngozi sighed, her heart softening. "Emeka, life in Abuja isn't kind to people like me. Every day I meet men who think money is the only language of love. You were different. Until you weren't. But seeing you tonight, I realized maybe your test wasn't just for women. Maybe it was for your own soul." He nodded, his voice low. "You're right. It was." For a long moment they just stood there, the fountain whispering between them. Then slowly Ngozi took a step forward. "You know, for someone who pretended to be a mechanic, you weren't very good at it," she teased. Emeka chuckled, the sound warm and familiar. "You noticed?" "How could I not? You almost broke that man's engine the first week." They both laughed, the tension melting away like morning mist. Then silence again. Emeka looked at her deeply. "Ngozi, I don't want to test anyone anymore. I just want to live honestly. And if you'll let me, I'd like to start that life with you." Ngozi's breath caught. The sincerity in his eyes made her heart race. But she shook her head slowly. "Emeka, I don't want your wealth. I just want your word, that this time you'll be real." He placed his hand over his heart. "I give you my word." A tear rolled down her cheek, not from pain but from release. She smiled. "Then maybe, just maybe we can start again." At that moment, fireworks from another event lit up the Abuja skyline, painting the sky in gold and purple. The reflection shimmered on the glass walls of the Hilton, framing them like two souls caught in divine light. Emeka took her hand gently, as if afraid she might disappear. "You taught me something, Ngozi, that love isn't found in the towers of Maitama or the garages of Nyanya. It's found in small acts of kindness that money can never buy." She smiled softly. "And you taught me that sometimes even a test can lead to a testimony." They stood there for a long while, no longer billionaire and food seller but man and woman reborn through truth. The night whispered around them, the city lights gleamed like blessings, and somewhere in the distance, a faint melody of hope played. As they walked toward the car park, hand in hand, Emeka turned to her and said quietly, "You know, I still can't fix an engine to save my life." Ngozi laughed, shaking her head. "Good thing I'm not marrying you for your mechanic skills." Their laughter echoed through the Abuja night, warm, unfiltered, real. And so, under the same stars that had once watched a billionaire pretend to be poor, two hearts finally found the one thing money could never buy: true love and grace.